Welcome to Microcap Moments, a podcast from Shore Capital Partners that highlights the stories of founders, investors, and leaders who have taken on the challenge of transforming ideas in small companies into high-growth organizations. The journey of building and scaling a business takes one down many unexpected paths. It's a journey where we learn from our mistakes, fall down often, but have the entrepreneurial grit to pick ourselves up and persevere. Within this series, we will share these stories of success and failure, of the challenges and the rewards faced by those who dare to dream big. And through their lessons learned, we hope to inspire others who are on a similar journey of becoming, growing, and leading.
In this episode, I talk with Tara Conger, executive partner at Shore Capital Partners and the former CEO for Tandem HR, a Shore Capital portfolio company. Tara started her career in sports and even worked as an assistant athletic director. But she wanted to see how all she had learned about successful coaches and teams translated to the business world. While obviously this was a big career jump, it more importantly shows Tara's voracious appetite for asking questions and learning, which was critical in her subsequent transitions from HR to COO and then to CEO with a successful exit in a relatively short period of time. She shares the importance of investing in people and culture and provides some defining practices she implemented as CEO of Tandem to sustain that culture amidst rapid change. Tara also shares a personal story well outside the scope of her being a CEO that reinforced Shore's same commitment to people and culture. She wraps up our conversation by sharing one moment for all the work and growth and travel and difficult conversations and leadership challenges that reminded her why it was all worth it. Welcome, Tara. Thanks for joining me today. To get us started, will you just introduce yourself and give us your name and tell us what you do here at Shore?
Sure. I'm Tara Conger, and I'm an executive partner now at Shore, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about my background and how I got here.
And how did you get here? What's your career? We'll come back to your being a CEO at Tandem HR, but what did you do prior to joining the Shore family?
My career is a little bit unique. So right out of college, I was actually in the sporting industry. And I spent about 5 years in the sporting industry in collegiate athletics, professional sports, and then I was an assistant athletic director. So what I loved about that is you built teams, right, and culture, and you saw good and you saw bad. And I saw coaches that were very successful and I saw coaches that weren't as successful. So I wanted to take that and morph it into the business setting. So I left there, and then I was in healthcare and industrial business, and I did HR for both of them. So again, building teams, building cultures. And I loved the people part, but eventually I realized I wanted to do more than just the people part because I was very passionate about business strategy, operations, and financials. So from there, I was hired to run an outsourced HR firm, which is some people know it as a PEO. And I can talk a little bit about what that is. And that was a turnaround situation. And I ran that, and it was very successful. And that I became heavily involved in the National PEO Board and Industry Association. And fast forward, that's how I'm at Tandem. And then Tandem approached us, and, Brian Kelly's very persuasive. And 9 months later, we were Tandem's first add-on acquisition. So
that's
unique.
Yeah, for sure. Well, tell me more about what you learned about successful coaches and successful teams that you transitioned into the world of business.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the situations I think of when I was an assistant athletic director, I was out in New York, and men's lacrosse is very popular out there. And the first year I was there, the coach was fine, but not maybe as motivational. And he had a hard time, I would say, picking the leaders and surrounding himself with a really good team. And it really fell to the coach. The second year, they made a coaching change and they brought someone in who was fantastic. And he picked his captains wisely. When you talk about leadership, you want followership. Who's going to run through a wall for you? And the captains were amazing. And they were able to just create this cohesive team and group of people. And everyone had their specialties. And they did those really, really well. So the coach was awesome. And actually that year we won a national championship. So and I was on the sideline for it.
Oh my gosh.
And we won 13-12 in triple overtime. It was pretty incredible.
That's amazing. So in that, is it talent evaluation? Is it strategy? How would you summarize that?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. For sure, getting the right talent and in the right roles and positions on the team.
Yeah.
So he made changes and put the best players on the field that worked well together. So their position maybe even changed actually from the year prior, but making sure you have the right people in the right roles. And that's the same thing in business, right? It's the same thing that I dealt with at Tandem, because you're only successful as your weakest team member. remember. So he made some changes. There were some people on the team that didn't have great attitudes. He changed them out. And then strategy. I mean, he was so prepared mentally, physically with the players and watching game film. And I'd be there at 11 o'clock at night and he's still there prepping for the next game. So a lot of it is preparation and processes, but it was a fun journey and evolution to watch and see.
And what part of that did you take into your HR leadership roles? You know, some people think about HR in a broad set of different ways, from looking at it as primarily being compliance-based to being really core to the strategy of the business and certainly in a growing business. How did you translate what you had learned there into your version of HR leadership, first in a turnaround, but then through the rest of your career?
So to me, HR is so much more than compliance,
For sure.
right? And I think that's what people think of, right? When they think of an HR leader. And to me, it is all about talent. I mean, you have to be a talent attractor and a culture builder. If I can summarize it in two things, it's talent and culture. That's what's really going to drive the company forward. And I was very fortunate when I was leading Tandem HR. My partner was really our head of HR. Because think about all the moving parts when you're working for a private equity-backed firm. And the decisions you need to make and the staffing changes you need to make. And so I had a really great relationship and a close relationship with her, but it was all about getting the right people, getting the team set. And that evolves over time, right? You start out as you need leaders that are more generalists in the beginning of the hold, and then you morph into specialists. So, having that right HR partner, I think, is crucial. And then the culture. To me, the fun part of business is the people and the culture and what you build and the day-to-day. And you have to have fun along the way while you're doing it. And you have to make it fun, right? And people have to be engaged because it can be a grind. It's a grind.
Yeah. You're asking a lot of people not to have a little bit of fun or to enjoy where they work, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the ultimate strategy, right? You want to keep your talent, keep your best people around, right? That is that culture piece.
Right. And culture is, to me, easy in the calm, when the seas are calm and everything's great. But culture really matters when the storms come, honestly. And how do you prepare and how do you react? And, are you resilient?
Yeah.
And because I think that's crucial.
And you joined Tandem HR in a COO role, right?
Yeah, so I was a president of the former company. But yes, when I first joined Tandem, we were the first add-on acquisition, and I joined as the COO. And then about 6 months into the hold, I became president and then CEO.
Talk about that transition. So you've played the HR lead role, you've played the operations lead role, and then the chief executive role. Any reflections on how those are different, how they work best together?
Yeah, they are very different roles. And I think in the HR role, I was always also thinking about operations and finance, which is somewhat unique because most HR people just think about the people. But I was always thinking about the impact to the business of those changes or what might happen if we made certain decisions. And I think that's why then I morphed into more of an operations leader president role. I would say from my HR leader, their lens was the people focus. And I think so much of it is change management. Working for a private equity backed company, if you don't want change, do not sign up for it. I mean,
hey man, let's roll that back and play it again.
I know. It is so true because it can be emotional whiplash, right? One day you're super excited because you made an acquisition and the next day you have to, make some staffing changes that aren't fun. And you just have to be mentally prepared and ready for that. So again, I was fortunate that my HR leader had dealt with a lot of change management and how to bring people along and make them feel comfortable because I said resilience is key and it's how do people react to it and are they adaptable and are they going to be okay with that change? So mentally preparing people. So I was very, fortunate to have that. I think when I was in an HR leader, I also was pretty fortunate to have some great presidents, CEOs, and owners of companies that really, they did care about the culture. It wasn't necessarily all bottom line. They knew that if you treated the people right, that the dollars would follow a lot of times. So I think I have been very fortunate in my career to work for some really great people.
You've talked a lot about culture. How do you maintain culture when you have the intensity and pressure and change of being a private equity-backed microcap company? How do you think about protecting, building, sustaining culture in that kind of environment?
So I think a high trust team is crucial. The second thing is clarity of expectations. I think sometimes when there isn't clarity on what those expectations are, I mean, I love data and we can have all the data and metrics in the world. And that's one of the things I love about Shore is data. They love data. And I love data too. But setting expectations very clearly for people. So for my direct reports, I would have, it's called the WHO method, and I would use scorecards. Every single role had one. And it was like, what is the mission of this role? And then what defines success for this role? And even when I was hiring people, I would give that to them and say, okay, tell me how you're going to accomplish this. And so it was very clearly defined. And I think that was super important. But culture is all about communication, right? Communicate. If I have to have the same conversation 3 times with one of my direct reports, they're not the right person.
Yeah.
And those decisions can be hard, but you have to make those changes. So if you're not communicating and setting time aside for a person, how do you have that? You just don't have that communication. So another thing I would do, there's a few things. I had sometimes weekly check-ins or for sure biweekly check-ins, but I would have a quarterly check-in with each of my direct reports, the same 10 questions. Like, what are you most proud of that you accomplished last quarter? What were some of the challenges? It was really real, raw conversations that you have to have. So much of it, sometimes I think leaders just think and assume, oh, my direct reports know what they're doing and kind of just not wipe their hands a little bit of it. But it really is truly about communication, setting those expectations, having clear check-ins, because then they're engaged. And let me tell you, if your team's engaged, their team's engaged. And I think that's where culture matters, because if you have a leader that isn't engaged, if they're not meeting their KPIs and they're not engaged, they're not typically the right person in that role. So we had fun along the way and we celebrated all the wins. But we also talked about the misses often. I mean, we talked about in the board meetings too, right? Because you're going to have
There's that.
I know.
But I think what's interesting, I mean, in this environment, you always want to have those practices, I'm sure, in any company. But when things are changing as rapidly as they are here, you can't rely on someone having been hired in a role or having a job description because it all evolves so quickly. And our aspirations and opportunities for people to grow into new roles has to evolve as rapidly as the business does. And so that kind of frequent touch point, that kind of discipline to a core set of questions, that kind of revisiting performance in the context of today's expectations, not just last year's expectations. Yeah. Like that seems like the only way you could keep up with the pace of change in the business.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I loved about Shore, I'll bring this full circle, is the strategic planning process, because it is about focus. Because you can clearly, very quickly, instead of focusing on 3 to 5 things, have 30 things. So what I loved about Shore was this annual strategic planning process, because everyone was aligned. And what we would do then is break those into our quarterly goals and then into monthly goals. But we would break them down into objectives and key results. What did each person need to accomplish to be able to meet those goals? And they cascaded throughout the organization. And we tracked those. So again, because it's constantly changing, you have this plan, but it might change from quarter to quarter. So, being on top of the communication, and we did a really great job because we would do bi-weekly town halls with everyone. And it was a half an hour. It was a non-negotiable. Everybody attended. It was 30 minutes because we wanted people to be aligned and rowing in the same direction and to hear the same message. And we had employees all over the country. So it was a good way for everyone to hear the message all at once. But if something changed or shifted, you knew you could talk about that in the next 2-week call.
Talk a little bit about the role and why it seemed like a good move for you to step into the executive partner role with Shore.
So because I had such a great experience with Shore, when we exited the business, I stayed on and helped with integration for about 4 or 5 months. And then I'm super passionate about HR in general. So I was asked to join 2 HR AI advisory boards, which I love. And I was doing some consulting. I still am. And, Justin approached me and said, hey, would you be an executive partner for Shore? And I thought about it and I love it because I can talk about the experience. So I've sat in many potential seller meetings, and I can talk about it because I've been there, right? And I think sometimes that's super helpful. It's not just someone from Shore saying something. I can talk about real life experiences sitting at that table, which has brought, I think, a lot of credibility to that seller potentially. I also love collecting great people and introducing them to Shore, whether it's a board member or an operating partner or a potential add-on acquisition, and helping out with investor calls. And so it has been very broad. There's a few people I mentor because, again, I've been in their shoes, right? It's their first foray into private private equity, what to expect, things to mentally think through, what to prepare for. And I really enjoy that part of it as well. And then helping with new industry verticals that Shore's trying to get into, some of the stuff that I'm passionate about. So there's a lot, but I love it.
You wrote a blog that I saw on LinkedIn that included 10 insights about leading private equity-backed companies and how it's different than a private company. And in your summary, you wrote, and I'm just going to read from my notes here, be ready for change, embrace accountability, and focus on impact. If you prefer stability over speed or long-term relationship building over rapid execution, PE may not be the right fit. But if you're energized by constant challenge, high expectations, and a focus on results, it's a career-defining experience. Will you just elaborate more on what compelled you to put your thoughts down? It was very well received. Lots of people responded to it, and just where that came from and why that felt like an important thing to describe and define.
Absolutely. I was walking with my husband and the dog in the morning, and I got this idea. I was like, I should really share the experience, because there are many people, I feel like, that are out there that are either going to go through it or maybe are thinking, should I join private equity? Should we sell? But then it happened about a week later, a YPO member, they sold to private equity. And they said, I had no idea, Tara. They called me because they knew. And they said, I had no idea how different it was going to be. And so that's kind of what spurred me to say, hey, I should really write down my thoughts on the difference, because there's going to be people maybe that read that and think, okay, yes, raise my hand. I want to do that. And there's going to be people that are like, no, that's probably not for me.
Yeah.
And I've had many of those conversations, right? Because it is not for everybody. It is not for the faint of heart. And again, not in a bad way. But
yeah, it's almost like managing expectations or setting expectations so that you make the right choice. It's not that one choice is inherently better than the other, but it's going in eyes wide open with what you're sort of saying yes to.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I feel somewhat fortunate that, again, we sold to private equity and Shore, because the company I was running, it was great. It was family owned, but we didn't move fast. And I like to move fast and I don't mind change. So it was a really good fit for my career progression, is how I would put it.
I think it is a question of match. And I think that a lot of times in different sectors, people think that it's a sign of success to take on a capital partner. Not if that's not what your goals of your business were, or for your family or otherwise. There is no single path to success. It is this idea of making the right decision. And oh, by the way, from the investor side, we want you to come in eyes wide open, because it's not good for us to have you wake up the week later and go, wait a second, I didn't know what I was getting into. It's just not good for anybody.
I think there's a statistic out there. I think Justin says, right, 80% of our first-time CEOs for Shore. But what I love about that is Shore has done such a great job of building resources to help, whether it's the first-time CEO or these executive leadership teams. We were blessed. I think I used Shore for literally everything. I mean, and not in a bad way, but every center of excellence, IT, marketing, sales, continuous improvement, talent acquisition. We used everything we could. And I think there's some CEOs out there that don't, because it would show weakness on their part. Whereas I think Justin and the firm has done a really great job of building out these resources to make their portfolio companies better. That definitely sets Shore apart from other private equity firms out there. And again, I feel like we were very fortunate to have all of Shore's resources, because when you are a maybe first-time CEO, you don't know, and you can talk to someone maybe that's been there, done that. So I think what sets Shore apart is the resources to help all the other portfolio companies.
Yeah, and I think Shore has always prided itself on being founder-friendly. It's been recognized as founder-friendly and takes the word partner very seriously when we partner with a company. And clearly, data matters, performance matters. I'm curious if you had any experiences where it was sort of above and beyond, where that relationship with Shore was clearly not about the data or clearly not just about business performance, but maybe it was something more meaningful to you.
There are many examples, honestly, I could probably give you, but one in particular that stands out to me. So Ryan Kelly was my chair, and I was traveling for work for M&A meeting. I think I was in North Carolina. My husband had just left that morning for work, and we had a babysitter for my daughter at home. So I'm flying back as he left and the babysitter's at home, and I'm in flight, and my flight from Chicago to Madison gets canceled, and it's the last flight of the night. And I was like, what am I going to do? There was no rental cars, and I'm panicking because I'm like, I need to get home. The babysitter can't stay there. And I texted Ryan Kelly. I was like, hey, is there anything, thoughts you have, or what can I do? Ryan was so great. Ryan sent a car to pick me up at the airport and drive me 2.5 hours back to Madison so I could get to Cassidy that night. At that time, she was 8 years old. I'm going above and beyond. Those are the moments that matter. I mean, just thinking about it makes me emotional a little bit because I was a working mom, right? I am a working mom. And there's situations where it's so much more than just the business. When, times of need or when something like that happened, to be able to help out so that I could get home to my family, that one I'll never forget. And then it makes you want to do more for sure and for the business, and motivates you even more to give your best effort for an outcome.
I love hearing that. And I think that my experience, even as a team member within Shore, and you're seeing as an executive partner role, that's pervasive. And that was part of the founder's intent. It was part of their relationship with each other. And it's something that they expect to be a part of the culture here. And so all of those stories are really meaningful.
Unfortunately, sometimes people have a bad connotation when they hear PE or private equity, and they think it's just numbers and data and bottom line. And sure, right, there's high expectations and you have to perform, but it is also more than that. And you don't hear enough about probably the good and the human elements in those stories.
And I think that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed, and you were hitting on before, about really being in the microcap space and being in a space where we're partnering with founder-led companies or family-owned companies. These are companies that were built because someone had a passion for an industry, or someone was building something to put their kids through college, or their community had a need, or whatever, and they were successful. And so most of the time, the people we're partnered with never dreamed of any kind of big financial outcome. They got to a point where they wanted to do more, have a bigger impact, and a financial partner became an answer. That's a very different thing than financial engineering or stripping down companies to get super. It's almost the opposite of what most people think about private equity.
Absolutely. And I think that's, again, where Shore does it right. I wasn't sure, honestly, when we came in, I was thinking, oh boy, they're going to get rid of our people, right? And try to cut costs. And it is so the opposite of that. They wanted to keep the talent. That's what they were paying for, was the talent. And Shore is a growth company. They want all of their portfolio companies to grow. So it is not about cutting talent. It's about growing and giving the resources that are needed to be able to be successful in the microcap space. And I think that's one of the challenges of the microcap space is you need to grow, but you also need to make sure the foundation is right and good. I remember after we did our second acquisition, I thought, okay, we really need to get some of this foundation set and in place, because yes, we needed to grow, but we also needed to get the foundation set to make sure we didn't have client attrition. And so you always have that constant battle between growth and operations to make sure you're doing it well, but you're also needing to grow. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges of the microcap space.
When you think about those challenges, when you think about your varying roles, what do you see as your biggest professional challenge that you've faced and overcome? And how did you overcome it?
I think I learned a couple things. Some of the best advice people gave me along the way is it's not about effort, it's about impact. And I think that's one of the things I struggle with in the beginning, honestly, of the change into private equity. I was working a ton of hours and I probably wasn't my best self. And I realized, I really need to delegate some of these things that I probably didn't need to do. And again, because I was focusing on the impact instead of the effort. And I think that really helped me in my role, but helped the company overall. But that took a little bit, honestly, to learn, because you want to make things better, but you can't do it all. Otherwise, you're going to burn out. So again, making sure you have the right team. And then another piece of advice someone gave me, it was quite a few years ago, was my brain is always on and it is always working. And I love to strategize. And just in business in general, say I'm almost at the finish line. Well, he would say, your employees are still maybe at the starting line or just running the race, and you have to bring them along. And that was some early career advice I got that it was really good for me to hear, because defining the why, explaining it so that they wanted to run the race with you, not behind you. And so I learned that earlier on in my career, and that was very helpful for me.
It's like giving people the opportunity to run with you, right? If they don't know you're running a marathon, then they don't know how to pace themselves.
Correct.
Or if they don't know which direction the marathon is, they don't know when they hit a crossroads which choice to make, right?
Absolutely.
You give them the best opportunity to make the decision that's in your best interest, right? The shift that I end up talking to people a lot about through Shore University and otherwise is this needs to get done. Do I need to be the one who does it? And if the more you can say this needs to get done and somebody else needs to do it, the more you're leading through others and the more you're scalable, the more your business is scalable and so forth.
And that's why, again, I love having our annual goals and quarterly goals. Like you have champions and owners of those, right? So you can delegate and make sure, again, people know what they're supposed to be doing and when.
What have you done that you're most proud of?
I think it's Tandem for sure. Joining Tandem HR, being backed by Shore Capital, everything we went through at Tandem to create an amazing company and then to have a successful exit. I remember the closing call. It was actually the 4th of July and I was in a tent. But I remember hanging up and the tears I was so happy and I was very excited. And all of that hard work, I just started crying. I mean, I had been through that before, obviously, but it's the culmination of all the work and time and energy and the talent and the people that helped you get there. And that would be it.
You mentioned before that roughly 80% of Shore CEOs are first-time CEOs. I'm curious, from your experience, what are a couple of key pieces of advice you would offer a first-time CEO helping launch a Shore platform?
Yeah. Utilize resources. I mean, don't be afraid to utilize the resources. Pick up the phone and call people, right? You want to talk to people maybe that have been there, done that, and have the war wounds so that you don't make maybe those same mistakes. And I think having those conversations is having a sounding board, because there are times where it's difficult situations and maybe you don't want to talk to your lead independent director or your board chair about it. So I have a core group of CEOs that I talk to when you have difficult situations. So having support or mentorship, I think, is really important. But I also say take care of yourself, right? I mean, it can be a grind. It absolutely can be a grind. And that's not a bad thing. But taking care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally to get through kind of those hard days and hard times. I think resilience is key because you're going to get knocked down. Things are going great. Maybe you have a bad board meeting. Maybe you lose a really big client. Maybe you have a failed process where that acquisition didn't go through. You're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, but it's how you react to that and how do you come back. And you have to not only keep yourself motivated, your team and all the employees. And, one thing I also learned along the way is making those difficult decisions. They're not easy, but I always thought, what you have to do what's best for 200 lives and not one life. And if you have that always in the back of your mind, I think you're going to make the right decision.
What haven't I asked you that I should have asked you about your career, your growth, your experience, anything that we haven't hit on that you would like to get on the record?
Maybe one thing is, why do I do what I do?
Yeah.
So I was traveling for M&A. I was on this national board, quarterly board meetings. I was traveling for that, running the business in Chicago, also in Madison. I split my time. So it could be tiring, right? And Josh and I, we have a daughter who was 8 at that time. And I remember I came home and I had had a hard day and I walked through the door and she came running up. She's like, "Mommy, you're on a magazine cover." I mean, honestly, she comes running up to me with the biggest smile on her face. And I thought, you know what? This is why I do what I do. Not because I was on a magazine cover, but she said, "Mommy, I am so proud of you. I want to be a boss lady like you someday." And she had heard me many times because my office was upstairs and her Lego set was outside my door. So she would hear me have difficult conversations sometimes or great conversations or leading meetings. So I thought it was so cute because she gets it. And she's like, "I want to be a boss lady like you someday." And I thought, that is why I do what I do, to be a great example and a great mother for my daughter. When life comes down to it, it is about your work, but it's about your family and the legacy you leave. And so instilling and modeling for her, working hard, being empathetic, building great relationships, building great teams, and having successful outcomes. So for me to be able to do that at such a young age for her, I hope that that's very impactful for her as she grows up.
If you enjoyed this episode, check out our other Microcap Moments episodes at www.shorecp.university/podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts. Here you will also find our Bigger, Stronger, Faster and Everyday Heroes series, each highlighting the people and stories that make investing in the lower middle market unique. This podcast was produced by Shore Capital Partners, with story and narration by Anderson Williams, recording by Austin Johnson, editing by Real Audiobooks, sound design, mixing, and mastering by Mark Galloop of Real Audiobooks. Special thanks to Tara Conger. This podcast is a property of Shore Capital Partners, LLC. None of the content herein is investment advice, an offer of investment advisory services, nor a recommendation or offer relating to any security. See the Terms of Use page on the Shore Capital website for other important information.